only organization administrators can add and remove users from an organization's SnapEval instance. Let's add a new team member to our SnapEval instance. We'll start by clicking on Administration and then Manage Users in the navigation menu. Next, we'll click on the Add Users button. We'll input the team member's first name and last name. If the team member has an email address, we'll enter it here. For organizations using SnapEval standalone, not integrated with ADP, an email address is required for a user to log into their own SnapEval account. However, it's not required that the user have email for others to capture snaps or create a performance summary for the user. Since a user can't log in without an email address, the user's manager can print hard copies of snaps or performance summaries to share with the user. If the user doesn't have an email address, check the No Email for this User checkbox and leave the email address field blank. In our demo, Cheryl Johnson does have an email address, so we'll input it. We can also add an optional job title for Cheryl. If Cheryl had a different hire date, we could input it here. We could give Cheryl the Organization Administrator role by checking this checkbox. Because organization administrators have full access to all SnapEval data and settings for the organization administrator role is typically only given to human resource professionals. We'll click the Submit button to add Cheryl to the organization's SnapEval instance. Since Cheryl was enrolled with an email address, she will immediately receive a welcome email from the SnapEval system. When we click the Submit button, we're automatically redirected to the Manage Organization Hierarchy org chart. The Manage Organization Hierarchy org chart is only available for organization administrators. This interactive org chart can also be accessed directly from the Manage Users page. Note that this is not the View-Only org chart available to all users directly from the org chart link in the navigation menu. The next step is to configure Cheryl's reporting relationships. To do this, we first need to add Cheryl's node to the org chart by clicking on the green button with a white plus sign by her name in the Add Users table. We'll also add Kelly Jordan's and George Thompson's nodes to the org chart. Now, we'll drag Kelly's node over the top of Cheryl's node to configure Cheryl as Kelly's manager. Then, we'll drag George's node over the top of Cheryl's node to configure Cheryl as George's manager. We'll click the green Save button to save these reporting relationships. SnapEval supports complex reporting relationships where an employee can have multiple managers. These additional relationships are called secondary relationships. Secondary relationships are identical to primary relationships, except they aren't displayed in the org chart. In other words, a secondary manager for an employee can do the same things as a primary manager for the employee. In our organization, let's assign Cheryl Johnson as a secondary manager for Betty Goodman. We'll start by clicking on the three white menu dots on Cheryl's node. This opens a menu where we can select Manage Relationships for Cheryl. The Manage Relationships for Cheryl Johnson page shows us her two primary reports, Kelly Jordan and George Thompson. To add Betty Goodman as a secondary report to Cheryl, we'll first find her in the Add Relationships table. If our organization had a lot of team members, the table's search feature would enable us to easily find Betty by inputting any sequence of letters in her name. In our small demo organization, Betty is at the top of the table. Since we want to make Cheryl a secondary manager for Betty, this means that Betty is a secondary report to Cheryl. So we'll click the Add as a Secondary Report button for Betty. Had we opened the Manage Relationships for Betty Goodman page instead, we would have added Cheryl Johnson as a secondary manager for Betty. We'll click the Save button to save this relationship between Cheryl and Betty. We'll then click on the Manage Organization Hierarchy button to return to the interactive org chart. If we refresh the org chart, a special symbol is displayed in the lower left-hand corner of Cheryl's and Betty's nodes. This symbol tells us that Cheryl and Betty both have additional reporting relationships that aren't displayed in the org chart. These symbols are displayed on their nodes because we assigned Cheryl as a secondary manager for Betty. There's a menu icon in the upper right-hand corner of the org chart. The menu enables us to export an image of the org chart as a PDF, PNG, or SVG file. We can also export the contents of the org chart as a CSV file. Now, we'll open the CSV file using Excel. To make it easier to view and sort, we'll highlight the data and format it as a table. We'll select a style for the table. We'll also select that the table has headers. Now, we'll make some adjustments to the column widths to best show the data. This table now shows us all of the important configuration data for each user in the org chart, including name, job title, email address, hire date, if the user is an organization administrator, if the user is a group administrator, who the user's primary manager is, who the user's primary reports are, who the user's secondary managers are, who the user's secondary reports are, which groups the user is a group administrator for, and which groups the user is a member of. This table is the ideal way to validate that the configuration of each of our team members is correct.